Excited to welcome you to the DisOrient Asian American Film Festival. My name's Jade and I'm going to be facilitating this Q&A. I want to take a moment to thank you all for joining us for our first ever virtual film festival and allowing us to continue our mission of raising Asian American and Pacific Islander voices and stories. I'm so excited that we're still able to connect this way virtually at a time when these stories feel more important than ever. I'm really excited for the films we have today to discuss in this Q&A. They're two of my favorite films of this festival. It's my pleasure to introduce the filmmakers of Takeout Girl and Blue Lanterns.
Hey, everybody.
Yay.
Hi.
From Takeout Girl, we have Hisonni Mustafa. He's the director and writer, producer. And then we also have Hedy Wong, who's the writer and lead actor and producer as well. And then from Blue Lanterns, we have Chen, who's the writer or director, producer. Yay, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. Thank you so much for being here and taking the time to talk with the DisOrient audience about your films. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
It is an honor. I love it.
Honor's ours. Okay, maybe let's start by going around and just sharing a little bit about your film, what it is, and then where you got the idea for it. Let's start with you, Brandon.
So my film is Blue Lanterns. It's a coming of age film about two Hong Kong kids. They're 13 years old. And so the original idea for the film, it actually originated from a news article I read. And it was about a Hong Kong triad drug bust. And it actually involved two kids that were 13 years old. So, and at that time, I was really fascinated by like Hong Kong culture and triad culture. And I was enrolled at a screenwriting class at my film school. So my screenwriting teacher was kind of pushing us really hard to write a script every week. And so yeah, that was kind of the starting point for my film. And from there, I started to incorporate aspects of my own life into my film. And like most of my films, I try and use like a single moment in my life or a scenario or a feeling. And that kind of is the inspiration for how I create a scene. Yeah, so for this film, I drew my inspiration from like feelings of betrayal, feelings of, you know, looking up to someone, mentorship, and feelings of not knowing what is right or wrong. And the most important thing, I think, is the feeling of losing a friend. So I kind of piece these moments, these feelings all together and try to add a little bit of everything into the story. And also the film, a lot of the scenes in the film were inspired by like true events or stories that I heard from local friends in Hong Kong or China. Yeah.
Thank you. All those feelings really came through in your film so beautifully.
Thank you.
All right, what about you, Hedy?
Very similar to Brandon. Just got to a point in my life where, you know, I just wanted to put it on paper. And although, of course, it is, you know, Takeout Girl is a fictional story, it is, we do draw from our backgrounds. And, you know, for me, my family owns Chinese restaurants in the Bay Area. So, you know, that's part of that background. And, you know, I just put a lot of just reflection of, you know, just reflecting on my upbringing and then my current situation in LA and everything. And so I just started putting down on paper. And Lauren, who played my brother in the movie, he was also a part of his influence was he grew up in the Pueblos. So, you know, so there's a lot of, you know, like Brandon said, just stuff from real life that we're putting into the story. And then Lauren introduced me to Hisonni. And that's how I met this great filmmaker right here with this Bob background.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Hisonni, yeah, your turn. How did you get involved in this film?
Well, Lauren did connect Hedy and I through Facebook. and she took the initiative to set up like a meeting. We had dinner just to talk about the film. And I knew upon meeting her, she was such a puzzle. I had never seen anybody like her before. I had never seen the combination of beauty and intensity that she had at that dinner. It was like meeting a supermodel mixed with like Don Corleone, basically. And I was like, I went home wondering, I was like, was she doing that to kind of like establish dominance on our first meeting so that I knew who was boss? I was like, what was that real? And as we talked more and more, I was like, that's real. Like, and I knew if I found her to be as astonishingly refreshing and new as she was, there would be a million other people out there who've never seen a person like her. So she came to me with the premise of a Asian American woman who parlays her food delivery skills into a profitable drug hustle in order to save her mother's restaurant and get her mother medical attention. But it was her personality that I knew I could make a 90-minute movie about her jumping rope and people would probably want to watch it. So we were off and running once I realized like she was the real deal.
So basically, Hedy really is Tara.
Okay, let me okay, so when I'm very respectful. I come from a family of entrepreneurs and stuff, and we respect people's time. And so when Lauren made that introduction, I feel like it was on me to take him out to dinner because I'm the one seeking his time and just, wanted to pick his brain. So to me, it felt pretty normal, a normal dinner, and, of course, at that point in my life, I was very, I've been through the ringer trying to get this movie made, and so after you've been through the ring, you just kind of know what kind of questions you want to ask. And I asked Hisonni, a string of questions, and what really made me feel like he would be a great partner was that he cared what happened to the movie after it's edited, after the final edit. He cares about where the journey, because a movie doesn't just, you could have a movie in your hand, but what you're going to do with it, right?
Yeah.
And Hisonni cared about what would happen to it. So that kind of sealed the deal for me.
I tried to scare her. I knew if she could handle hearing how difficult the film was going to be and not flinch. Brandon's laughing because he knows what I'm talking about. I told her everything that could go wrong. I told her how long it would take. I told her every phase of it. And then I would look at her because we sat in the car talking, and I looked at her and she was just like stone faced. And I was like, either she doesn't get what I'm saying to her or she's legit game for all of that. And she kept saying like, hey, do you want to make the movie? So I knew if I couldn't scare her with the idea of how tough the process would be, we were going to be all right.
You're both really in it.
Yeah.
Heidi,
you're
you're kind of a badass, huh?
Well, growing up, with immigrant parents, it's kind of like when he goes, it's going to be a real tough. I'm like, I've been hearing that since I was 2 years old. Go on ahead.
All right. Thank you for those wonderful answers. Kind of going off of that, could you maybe talk a little bit about once you started working together, what that production process was like, sort of like how long it took, how big of crews did you have in different locations? Let's start with Takeout Girl this time.
Hedy, you want to do that?
It took, I brought him the original draft of what I wrote, for Takeout Girl, but, I'm a first time screenplay writer. I don't really, so I wrote the script in a fashion where I have a whole bunch of extra explanations to whoever's going to make it, why I want it a certain way, or, the inspiration behind it. So me and Hisonni, as we were cleaning up the script, the new inspiration started to come in. And Hisonni taught me a lot about, how for a feature film, you can only have about 90 minutes. And what I wrote was a little bit too many characters. So he started to help me streamline the story, focus it more on Tara instead of this whole world of characters. And we just want to make sure the writing was right, because we knew that if the writing and the story was right, every step after that will be a little bit easier, you know. But of course, we went through the, you know, ringer. Just as an indie film with not a lot of money, you know, I knew it was going to be hard, but it was also my first rodeo. So, you know, it's like, you know, he's been hit before, but, you know, when the trials came, yeah, it was stressful. It was definitely stressful. And when you have people who really care, you know, teamwork can be hard work, but that's only because we care. You know, we care about doing the best we can as we work towards the finish line. So does that answer your question? Damn, I just rambling.
Yeah, no, that was great.
Okay.
So that original draft was actually really dope. Sometimes I wonder if but the difference is two major things. It would have played really well as like a docudrama. You would have had to shoot her original draft as reality, and that was just kind of scripted, and it would have been really, really raw, which we kept a little bit of that rawness in the film you've seen. But the biggest problem I had with it is Hedy, once you get to know her, she's one of the most giving people in the world. Like, she really cares more about the people around her than she does herself. So the script reflected that. Every character had like more screen time than her. And I was like, wait a second, I signed on to make a movie about you. And I was like, you're gonna go through all this trouble and not put yourself in the movie? So I had to fix that right away. And I made sure she was in like every scene basically. And it's paid off hugely. And I think that was, and then we just kind of found commonalities, which I'd love to talk about later, but I do want to hear how Brandon put his stuff together too.
Yes.
For me, it was a brutal process, especially during production. Took place over the course of around 13 days. And we were stretching our budget. Our crew had every member of our crew probably had to take on more than one role, maybe like 2 or 3 roles. So it was an ambitious project for, you know, a bunch of film students. And yeah, just consecutive sleepless nights. But, you know, as the producer of the film, I also had to keep pushing us forward as a team. And so the production actually was split up in 3 locations. There was Hong Kong, Beijing, and Taiwan. So the first part of the production we shot in Hong Kong for 3 days, and I just came with a team of 7. And luckily I found some local support on the ground in Hong Kong, and a couple of friends and others who were just purely interested in the project. It was pretty stressful to shoot in Hong Kong because we were kind of like guerrilla shooting. We didn't really have permits or anything. I remember we shot in, there's a fruit market scene in the film, and that's a real outdoor fruit market. And it was just extremely difficult because we had to shoot around all these workers, and they were all kind of shady characters, probably actual gangsters too. So we just didn't want to get in their way. And so we were just kind of working our way around, and then it started raining halfway through the scene. And once it started raining, they all started to cover all the fruit boxes with like tarps. And that just completely messed up my continuity, you know? And I was like, oh, great. Now I have to come back tomorrow and try and fix it. And when I came back tomorrow, all the boxes in the street were all different. They weren't in the same place. So I had to fake it through. I had to use close-ups to kind of connect the scene together and, you know, kind of find a way. So after Hong Kong, we finished after 3 days, and we got on a plane to Beijing, and we shot in Beijing for a consecutive 7 days. Right when we got off the plane, we didn't even have any time to rest. We just went straight on set. And then, yeah, this was also tough, especially for art direction, because we had to kind of fake like Hong Kong streets, a Hong Kong setting. And for people who have been, like, Beijing and Hong Kong have very different Chinese aesthetics. So yeah, I remember it was very tiring. And one of the last days we were shooting at a abandoned factory, and I was so tired. I just laid down on the concrete, and I've never felt so comfortable in my life. I took a nap for an hour. So yeah, the Hong Kong and Beijing were very tough. And about a month later, I had to shoot the opening and ending scene in a temple. But the thing about shooting in temples is it's very superstitious and taboo in Asia. And I couldn't find one that would allow us to shoot with the right setting. So fortunately, like my family is from Taiwan, and we were able to get in touch with the local temple through my uncle. And they also weren't too keen on us shooting there. But it turned out that my grandpa actually was a donor to this temple and helped get the temple get built. So, and we didn't know that. So they were just like, just do whatever you want, shoot. So at that time, I just arrived with a crew of 5. I arrived with my cinematographer and my first AD, and we had a local crew of 5. And I was pretty nervous because, you know, there's so many stories about people shooting in temples and then they come home and all of their footage is like corrupted. So I was like, oh no. So I just made sure that my entire crew, we paid respect to the temple, we prayed, and yeah, I didn't want to take any chances. So yeah, that was a pretty cool experience.
I'm a big fan of the temple scene. I was telling Hisonni how beautiful it was, the opening and stuff, and it just seems so like majestic. And yeah, I didn't know that we weren't supposed to shoot in temples, because when I travel with my family to temples, I'd be taking pictures. But my dad would always tell me, don't take any pictures of graveyards or gravestones, tombstones.
Right.
I didn't know that we're not supposed to take pictures of temples too, because I was doing it. Oops.
I mean, you can take pictures. It's just like to bring in a whole crew. I think they get a little like. I tried to take a picture in a local temple in Taiwan a few days ago, and they were kind of like, "No, you can't take a picture. You have to pray first, and then you have to make sure you take a nice photo of Buddha." So, yeah.
It's awesome.
That sounds like a journey.
Yeah, it was a journey. It was extremely exhausting.
Oh, I bet. Brandon, kind of going off of that, all the different locations you shot in, my next question was, you had mentioned, well, if you've seen the film, it's all in Cantonese. And in talking to you, I learned that you don't write or speak Cantonese. What was it like directing a film that was entirely in a language you don't write or speak?
Directorial debut, this was like probably the most challenging part of the film. I had to work with actors that I had to speak to them in Mandarin, and or English, and it was kind of there was just like a language barrier. But what I learned was, it's a good opportunity to like trust your actors, and all I had to do was make sure that they said specific dialogue that was crucial to the plot and that could drive the story forward. And the rest was really just improv. I really let them, have their freedom. But yeah, it was, especially in post-production, it was really stressful because, once I started editing, I was like, what the heck am I editing? Like, I don't know how to connect any of these scenes. What are they saying?
So how did you do that?
Yeah, so I had to interview, like I cut together the scenes, just kind of a rough cut. And then for scenes that were more focused on the dialogue, I had to hire an editor. Her name was Yi Zhang, and she spoke Cantonese. She was a student at Chapman at the time, and she really helped me. She kind of saved the film in this aspect because I really didn't know what I was doing. And I think on set it was pretty fun because I could allow the actors. I was just like, just curse however way you want to, and I think that really allowed it to feel more natural rather than like a direct translation from English to Cantonese. Yeah.
Thank you for that. This next question is kind of connecting both films sort of thematically. They're both in different ways, sort of coming of age stories, as they're about these young people grappling with sort of the relationship between desperation and morality as they're trying to kind of get out of these difficult situations they're growing up in. I was wondering if you could kind of talk about how that theme presents in the films that you made, and yeah, if that was something that you set out intentionally to do. Maybe let's start with Hisonni this time.
Yes, we were intentionally setting out to do that. The beautiful thing about Takeout Girl is kind of the partnership between myself and Hedy, and the fact that we could tell such a cohesive story because we both relate to those themes so strongly. I came from a really terrible situation in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She had a rough patch when she was young up in the Bay. And then not only that, we had a super diverse crew of producers that all of this storytelling was filtered through as well. And I think it gave the film a really unique flavor. But desperation is a huge theme. And it obviously drives the character. But I think for me personally, one of the things that I loved about telling the story of Takeout Girl is that it was an opportunity to shed light on the actions people take when they're desperate, and if possible, elicit some sort of empathy for people in those situations, especially here in America, where we incarcerate more people than some countries have total. And we over police desperate areas. And if I can get just one politician to watch this film and have empathy for us underrepresented groups and understand that not every criminal act was done because that person's a supervillain, therefore we got to lock them up for a ridiculous amount of time, maybe there can be some changes regarding the criminal justice system that'll move it farther away from punishment and more toward rehabilitation.
Thank you. Yeah, this film really made me think about how people who have committed crimes are often some of the most stigmatized members of society. And this film did such a good job of showcasing the larger systematic issues at play. So I think you did a really good job of that.
Thank you.
Hedy, did you have anything you want to add to that?
He did such a good job. No, just, I think, just on a more personal note, I think when people are, when people feel like they don't have a lot of options and stuff, and this world is, depending on the people around, how many of us are judged by how much we make, how much money we have, right? And after a while, you start to realize that the world doesn't play fair, So what are you doing playing fair? Just kidding. No.
No, you meant that. You totally meant that.
No. Clean it up, Hisonni. Tell them the morality of the movie. Tell them real quick. No. And it's just to think and really, I just want, one of my purpose of, wanting the story told is to tell people that they're not alone in their times of desperation and need, because at your darkest time, you're just trying to figure out a way, and you feel so alone. But really, everybody else around you is trying to figure out life just the same as you,
Right. It's really just a human story when it comes down to it.
Yes.
Right.
Brandon, how do you think those themes played out in your film?
Well, I think since my film is about two teenagers, I think at that time, at the age of 13, it can be kind of confusing, and when one is just transitioning from being a child to an adult. And I think when I was a teenager, I was a kind of a troublemaker, and I would get carried away and just having fun with friends. And I think I was lucky enough to realize I was getting carried away, because I feel like it's a really fine line between just having fun and losing control. And I saw this with many of my friends growing up, and even some who are no longer with us. So a character like Kit, when he has no family to support him and he has to look elsewhere for guidance and survival. I think that can sometimes lead to the wrong kind of influences in your life. And you know, when you're growing up, like it can, when you're living a life like that, it can be easy to lose kind of your perspective of right and wrong. And I think that's really when we kind of blur the lines of our moral compass. Yeah.
Both of these films really tackled themes that you don't really see in a lot of films that are primary, like with Asian and Asian American stories. How do you think that this film fits in with other Asian American or Asian films, and what's kind of the reception been like in those communities for you? Maybe let's start with Hedy.
Well, I think this story, it's not shown in Asian American films a lot. That's very true. I think a lot of our stories aren't really shown in the media, right? And for me, this story is very relatable because I come from, my community of, immigrants, and some of those immigrants actually are from the sect that Brandon talked about in his film, Homu. I'm very familiar with that one. And so to me, I personally was aware of this, but that's just part of my fabric of, my American experience. I hope that this film, once it's released, that it could just add more textures to our stories, because right now there's a big fad of the whole Crazy Rich Asians thing. And because we have such little representation in the media, that becomes our blanket like representation for us. Right now, everybody thinks we're all Crazy Rich Asians. And I'm looking around my friends going like, when did we become crazy rich? Like, I don't feel it. I don't feel it.
I don't remember this.
I don't remember this. How have the years changed? But I think it's great to just add more, So I think that was your question, right? Like how?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So just to put it out there, just add more colors to it, as we should, for all communities, just more stories. Nobody's just one thing. Nobody's just rich or poor. We're everything in between too,
Yeah, definitely. Do you have anything you want to add to Takeout Girl for that, Hisonni?
Yeah, I love being a part of this conversation. I think Hedy and I were being a little ballsy, for lack of a better word, because we knew just our team up is fairly uncommon. To have a Black man tell an Asian woman's story is like something that would never be greenlit in Hollywood today. You have to be exactly that thing to tell that story, or there's going to be millions of people offended by it. But the beauty of what just happened is that it just happens to be really relevant to the situations that are going on today. And it shows you, which is something Hedy and I kind of said to one another, we wanted a relatability. In a weird way, Hedy said, she always said, I just want to make a movie, which I translated as she wants to make something that is special to every demographic for a very specific reason that maybe not every other demographic understands. So for me as a Black person, this film is about dedication to your family and your mothers, which is so universal.
Yeah.
Like Hedy and I were able to tell a cohesive story in the script because we both got moms and we would both die for them. Who doesn't relate to that? But then you start the film with an Asian woman dropping out of school, and every Asian is going to go, whoa, you don't see that very often. And then there's scenes that are specifically for the Asian American community thematically, like when Tara learns something very important about herself and her mother just goes back to work. They don't talk about it. They don't address it. That was something that felt like a lot of young adults that are Asian probably could relate to that. And that might require some unpacking after the film. But I know there's 5 or 6 moments like that. We have the Nate character in the film who, as a matter of fact, it's a melting pot of a story. Everybody's in the same position. Everybody's desperate. Everybody's made mistakes. Everybody's you're discovering everybody's made mistakes. And just seeing an Asian American story in a real melting pot of a scenario, I think is kind of a new perspective, and we wanted to push that. But yeah, I can go on all day about themes that are relevant to this story and what author's intent for, for this group and this group and this group, and then overall themes that should carry us for anybody. And that's what I think is unique about this film, is the relatability. Everybody would do what Tara did, even though it's wrong, or almost everybody. There's some nuns and monks out there and priests that probably not, but.
Well, I think, yeah, that's like the value of having so many different perspectives coming into making the film. That's how it's able to be so authentic and universal, and that really comes across.
And it also is also a reflection of, LA too. I always told Hisonni, the story is very universal, but the setting is very, to me at least, is very LA, because south of the 10 in LA, all you have is Black, brown, and a little bit of the Asian community, and then as you go towards West LA, then it becomes a little bit more white, and in the valley, different demographics. But the redlining, in the history of redlining stuff, there's a reason why, minorities are kind of pushed into one area and have to learn how to live with each other, and then, in other communities by themselves in one area. It's so certainly not a gimmick. It's really a reflection of a young Asian really just getting out in the world and trying to figure out her life. And I think that separates us from the older generation, where they're kind of stuck in their, whether it's Koreatown or Chinatown, their community is just that, they deal with everybody else that's Asian. But I feel like the younger Asian kids, we're more integrated. We step out, we play with, we make friends from other communities. We do business with people in other communities.
And that was something we tried to push too, thematically. In the film, Tara's superpower is her ability to code switch, basically. She grows up in a melting pot of a world, and she can speak everybody's language. You can be the grimiest gangster, or you can be mommy, and she can communicate to you, get things done, and she can adapt to her environment better than anybody else. So like, I've always kind of seen Takeout Girl as a little bit of a superhero film, because like that, she does that better than anybody on the planet. And again, talk about universal and very specific. Hedy relates to that on a very specific, for a very specific reason. I know I do. All Black people speak job interview and then hood, and we have to code switch to get ahead in the world. And I, that's something that's not even talked about very often, but I love just that, how easily she does that, and how, as a part of a generation that only knows America, but is also fully Asian, that is a skill everybody has to have. They got to be able to get through the tough parts of town. They got to be able to talk to their professors. They got to be able to talk to their parents, navigate Chinatown. It's an amazing skill that no one talks to, because we associate it with inauthenticity, as opposed to a legit skill that can be the reason why you survive anywhere. Anyway, sorry about that, Brandon, taking way too long.
No problem.
Yeah, that was
passionate.
Though, that code switching was so apparent in the film in a way that I've never seen on screen before. So that was
especially with an Asian American woman.
Yeah.
Like, again, like, we only see people very deeply rooted in tradition, or people scratching the surface of what it means to be American. And Hedy was very adamant about that not being the case. And for me, again, like, a Black man being able to relate wholly to an Asian American woman's story, man, I really think that aspect of this needs to be talked about a lot more. That's where truly interesting and fresh stories come, is when you take people from separate tribes and have them tell a story together.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. All right, Brandon. The question was, how do you think that this film fits in with other films that depict Asians and Asian Americans, and what's the reception been like for you in different communities?
Well, I actually agree with what Hisonni and Hedy said. I think, like, growing up in Hollywood, you see the typical stereotypical Asians that are cast in the Hollywood films. And I remember just feeling a lot of disconnect because that's just not really how I saw myself. And you know, so with Blue Lanterns, what I really wanted to do was show a different side, like a slightly darker side, like Hedy said, like more colors, right? So, and I wanted to show it through a more Western style of storytelling. So it could be more relatable to, or universal to anyone in the world. So even though the film takes place in Asia, what it really speaks to is kind of the struggle of growing up, to go through poverty or to have to overcome all these obstacles in your life. So I think what it really comes down to, it's more about being human. And I think that's what a lot of people miss when telling their stories. And, you know, I think as humans, we all have hearts, and it's our job as filmmakers to kind of touch the hearts of our audiences and change their perspective. Yeah, that's what I have to say.
Yeah, thank you for that. Let's see. I think we're kind of maybe going over time a little bit now. So let's maybe go to what all of you are working on now and what's coming up for you. Let's start with you, Hedy.
Yeah, I'm working on helping my friends write and produce. I'm jumping back into the more acting thing, and so I've been auditioning a lot, and you know, it's just I learned a lot from the Takeout Girl journey, and also Hisonni's been a great coach, you know, in the business and about the arts. So I'm just trying to, you know, move forward with all this knowledge and try to get it back again. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, just moving on, trying to make magic again, you know, in this industry.
Nice. Can't wait to see what's in store for you next.
Yes.
Great. Hisonni.
I am trying to get Takeout Girl in front of as big an audience as possible. And thank you guys for screening our film. You are a giant help, and I hope as many people as possible see us at the festival. Beyond that, I have a short film called Blunt, based on the true story of me being in an interracial relationship and bridging any friction between me and my girlfriend's parents with weed and the hijinks that ensue because of that. And then I'm moving on to my partner. He's doing a true story a short film called Novenario about a 9-day-long wake, which is a tradition in Cuban culture. The death of his grandfather and not being able to connect to his family because he doesn't speak Spanish or truly embody what it means to be Cuban. We're doing a feature at the end of the year, developing a prequel to Takeout Girl with Hedy.
Nice.
And
Wow.
things are going really, really well. And I'm learning how to cook with this quarantine time. I learned how to make pretzels and donuts, and most recently, homemade pizza. So my relationship, thankfully, was able to survive the 2-day outage of internet I had because I was able to cook wonderful food in the meantime.
That'll do it. Great. Well, I can't wait to see you two again when we have the prequel for Takeout Girl at DisOrient. All right, Brandon, what's next for you?
Yeah, I think for Blue Lanterns, just like Hisonni, I'm just trying to get as much exposure as possible. And, you know, thank you for screening Blue Lanterns at the festival. I'm excited. Other than Blue Lanterns, I've been entering the documentary scene, mostly as a executive producer or producer. And one of the most recent documentaries is called Kenny Scharf, When Worlds Collide, and that follows the street artist Kenny Scharf. And it was supposed to premiere in South by Southwest last year, but it got canceled because of COVID. Other than that, I also have a film called Hair Dryer that's also taking its run in some festivals right now. Yeah, and that's a film that I produced.
What's that one about?
That one is kind of about, it tackles themes of like sexual harassment. It's about the relationship between a mother and daughter. It's more of an art house film. Yeah, other than that, I'm developing, as a director, I still have a few short film ideas that I'm developing and a feature-length horror film that I'm writing right now.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, hopefully we'll see you again too.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Okay. I think that's about all the time we have for this Q&A. Thank you so much, Hedy, Hisonni, and Brandon, for spending time with the DisOrient audience and for making films that showcase Asian and Asian American and really just human stories, because that's what DisOrient's all about. To everyone watching, go see these films if you haven't already. You won't regret it.
Twice.
Thank you.
Go see them twice.
Yes. And also make sure you rate the films that you see, because your favorite film could receive an Audience Choice Award.
Ooh.
And yeah, thanks everyone again for spending time together and for being a part of DisOrient.
Yay!
Thank you guys.
Thank you, Jade.